All right, here we go again. It's that time. Thank you all for coming to this year's Mobile Me and You conference. This is the fourth year we've had this conference. It has grown every year. We're really excited about it. We've got people coming in and out all day Friday and Saturday. We have wonderful speakers, and we have our largest registration ever. It's approximately 425 people have registered for various sessions of this conference. And I know that it's not to hear anybody speak except these incredible speakers that we've had coming in. So thanks to them, we've had a lot of people show a lot of interest in this conference. And I want to mention, of course, that this conference was meticulously planned to not be on a football weekend. A year ago, we selected the date because this was a bye weekend for the football team. And so when the team's first game was canceled and then they decided that they needed to do their makeup game on this Saturday, Coach Frost called me about 7-8 times. I finally took his call. And he apologized profusely for the inconvenience of having to schedule a football game during this conference. And he said that to make it up to us, what he's going to do is going to win incredibly. Or as someone might say, he's going to win bigly. He's going to win very, very bigly. He's going to win so bigly that none of you have to attend on Saturday. It's already a foregone conclusion. You can come here and get a free lunch and know that the team is doing wonderfully, and you can follow it on Twitter. So on Saturday, we invite you all to make sure that you come to our incredible speakers on Saturday. And at the end of the day, you get to play with drones. So the last talk of the day is drone journalism, and people who are here get to fly some drones around. But we have speakers talking about CNN and what they're doing with mobile media, talking about an experimental lab that Northwestern University has, talking about Snapchat and Instagram and all sorts of live platforms for you. We have excellent speakers on Saturday. So we want to make sure that you all come for that too. So please show up on Saturday for us. And like I say, that's the best way you can support the team by, of course, when you show up here on Saturday, you will be taking things away for your future, not just a game. If you go to the game, it's 4 hours. Come here, you leave with stuff for the rest of your life. So I want to thank first of all of our speakers, and you will see why when you hear each one of them speak, because they're wonderful. And in particular, I want to thank our partners, and those partners are the University of Illinois College of Media, and also affiliated with that is the Midwest Center for Investigative Reporting. And two of our colleagues from both the University of Illinois and from Midwest Center are here, Professor Brad Houston and Pam Dempsey. Pam has been the backbone that makes the logistics of the conference work. So let's give Pam a hand. She's great. I was going to say she keeps me calm, but actually what she does is she keeps me in chocolate. So that's like the next best thing. Our other partners we have are Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism and Marketing and Integrated Communication, and they are joining us in this, as well as we're delighted to welcome this year the Rural Futures Institute at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. They did this coolest of things. They created a contest for community leaders, healthcare leaders throughout Nebraska, but prominently rural and central and western Nebraska, to come to this conference because they realized that mobile media and rural life go hand in hand. In fact, quality of life in rural areas and mobile media, and we believe also mobile healthcare go hand in hand. So some of the people coming as guests and scholars of the Rural Futures Institute are they are community leaders, they are government leaders, and they are healthcare leaders. So we're delighted to welcome them, and we're very thankful for this wonderful partnership with the Rural Futures Institute. Also, things like this don't happen if you don't have the support of your dean. So Dean Amy Struthers, thank you very much for all the help you've given this conference, and we appreciate it very much. So, yes. And you'll see later, I had a class help out with this, and you'll see their names on slides as we go throughout the conference. But I had a class help also organize this. I want to thank them for all they've done for us here. So with that, I think we're ready. I think we're ready for Chris Meighan, who is the director of emerging media at the Washington Post. And he's, as I've told several of you, he's the guy who helps the Washington Post experiment on all kinds of platforms. And much of what they do is not always a success. Sometimes it's a learning experience, and Chris can tell us about all of that. The nice thing about large organizations like the Washington Post and the New York Times, when they experiment with new media, is they have the money to do so, and they can then help the rest of us from what they have learned. And that's one reason why Chris is here, and we want to welcome him. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. As Gary said, I'm the Director of Emerging News Products at the Washington Post. A little bit about me. I've been at the Post for 10 years. My background is in visual journalism. And so my time at the Post has been spent for about the first 5 years I was there. I was art director, and then I was the deputy design director for the Washington Post. And then this team, which I'll be talking about, was formed, and I moved over to be the design director for this team. And then now I'm the director. So a little backstory. In 2013, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. This signaled a real change for the company. Up until that point, we had been owned by the Graham family, one of the best ownership groups in all of America for newspapers, but we were losing money, and we were shrinking what we were doing. We were becoming more of a hyper-local institution as opposed to a national institution. And when Jeff Bezos bought the paper, that changed. We changed our philosophy. We changed our approach. First, we became a media and tech company. We have a huge engineering department now. We have a huge product department. We are creating industry standard content management systems. And so now we have that are being bought by everyone from the LA Times to who else? I'm trying to like the big ones. Philadelphia papers, Boston Globe. All of these papers are now running on our content management system that we developed in-house. So we always had great journalism. Now we have this great tech side, and now it's meshing together. So our goal when he took over was to grow the brand again, grow it, turn it into a national brand, not just a DC politics brand. Find new audiences, and one way you do that is by experimenting at scale. And then how we do that, we integrate product, engineering, and editorial. And that's sort of where my team comes in. What is the Emerging News Products team? We were formed about 6 months after Jeff Bezos bought the Post. Our goal was to function like a startup within the newsroom. When we started, we had 15 people, and that was made of editors, designers, and multi-platform producers or editors, whichever term. We're now up to 30 people, and that includes now video editors, animators, more producers, more editors, and some writers as well. And so our mission was to kind of go off in the corner and experiment with platforms and see what stuck when we're trying to go after new audiences. So I say that we have 5 pillars. when people ask me what our team does. Sort of our main, the backbone of our operation is the first one. It's our national app. This is what the team was formed around. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Then we handle some of the distributed platforms, so Apple News, MSN, and Flipboard. We manage our Snapchat Discover presence. We also run the Lily, which is a bit of a departure, but it's a female-focused new vertical from the Washington Post. And then what I like to call the others, which is a lot of one-offs and experiments that sometimes go places and sometimes don't, but they're much smaller investment. For example, if Facebook comes to us and says, we have an idea to try something new, would you like to be an alpha partner? And we always say yes. So we really cultivate all these relationships with platforms, so they do come to us. So this is our national app. The awesome thing about it for us is it comes pre-installed on every Kindle. So we have a great base to start from, because if anyone, you guys all know about apps are really hard to discover if you're just going to an app store. So to have something that comes on, millions of devices is awesome for us and a real advantage for us. But the idea and the philosophy behind this app was to bring the visuals and sort of the idea of curation from the newspaper to an app environment. We call it sort of the tablet version of our app is very much a lean back experience. We publish 2 editions, a morning and an evening. It's curated by our team of editors. So for example, the Washington Post publishes anywhere from 300 to 400 pieces of content a day. And it's the job of my team to basically whittle this package down to 120 to 150 pieces at any given time. And giving it that newspaper feel. So when you go into it, you can go through the whole thing and you can get sort of a sense of completion when you're done. It's just not scrolling forever. And then the visuals are beautiful. There's so much custom design in this thing that it really has set apart itself from the competition and what other people are doing. And we're really at a place, it's really at a position of advantage to be able to put this type of resource behind an app. Because if you guys don't know or do know, apps are back. So apps were gone, now they're back. And because of the type of engagement you get on an app is so much deeper than what you would get on a Facebook or Twitter or any of the other platforms. People who engage with apps will read exponentially more content, are more likely to subscribe, and will become a loyal reader. And so I think the industry, although we care about scale, we're also now thinking about converting to subscribers. The focus is back now on subscribers. And so we're valuing those people more. So I use this to start off because a lot of what we do piggybacks on that app. So Apple News, I'm not sure if any of you guys use it or if you know what it formally is. It's the thing in left of home, we call it, when you swipe and there's stories over there. It's seen in the first image there. Apple News comes on pre-installed on iPhones, iPads, iPod Touches, anything in iOS 9 or later, and I think it's going to be on desktop. It might be on desktop now, actually. And it's available in the US, UK, and Australia. So why do we like Apple News? Why is it important? One, it's installed on every Apple device. So you have a huge base you're playing with there. So Apple came to us when they were in the process of developing Apple News and figuring out what they wanted to do. Our approach was always to be all in as an early partner. And how did we do that? We dedicated engineering resources up front to work with Apple's teams. We send that feed from our tablet to Apple, so it comes with all the great design that goes with it. And then from an editorial standpoint, the great thing about Apple is they actually have human beings curating on their end, and they have editors. So you can talk to editors. They come from some of the best news companies around the globe and the United States, from CNN to New York Times. So they get it. They get what good news is. They don't they're not into clickbait. They want to put top content in there. We share a Slack channel with Apple, with their Apple News team. So we can pitch them. We can let them know when big stories are coming. We feel like if we're going to enter into a partnership, we have to go all in for the most part. We have to show investment, so then they will invest back in us. And this has proven to be a really great model for us. So we started by this idea of pitching stories, giving them our feed. And then we had this idea of, what if we start creating original content for them? We're known for politics coverage. It's our bread and butter. As we were coming in the run up to the 2016 election, we pitched them, hey, how about if we created this election essentials brief that would run once a week. They loved it. We were the first people to create original content just for them. They liked that so much that after Trump was elected, they said, hey, would you guys be interested in doing a transition brief? So 20 days out from the inauguration, we did a daily brief just summarizing what was going on. And then that was so successful, they said, hey, would you guys be willing to do the first 100 days? So then we did a brief every day for 100 days, the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. And so by doing this, we're cultivating this back and forth. Everyone's got buy-in, everyone's a participant. Then we think, what's the next way we can evolve this relationship? We've created original content. We're giving them our feed. We're communicating with them daily. Let's look at the design of this thing. So we're going to see here, I think, let's see. What you see here on the left is basically a typical story form. It's clean, it's fine, it's got lots of assets. But what we were doing on our mobile site and what we were doing on our website for these same stories were much more robust feature stories. And we were spending all these resources on these other platforms, and we're like, hey, we'd really love to bring some of that energy to your environment and your ecosystem. So we got together with their engineering team and our engineering team, and we basically started to push the bounds of what can be done on their platform. And now we've gotten to a place where we produce probably 2 of these a week, where it's a very unique design, different than anything else that's being done in Apple News. And they love it. And they love that someone's taking their platform and taking it to the next level. So then they look at us, they want to spotlight these stories because they want their readers to be able to engage with this.
At the street level, the People's Drugstore was there, and then above it was SCLC. People were shocked.
So then we were like, what can we do next? We've done these 3 things. What's the next logical level of our relationship? So we decided to build this Election Now module or hub. It's completely native to Apple News. It only lives in Apple News. It's been going since the primaries, so it's been going since about midsummer. It breaks down what's happening, breaks down key races. It's got all kinds of cool information in there and motion, and it's very slick. And we update this several times a week, and it's published and featured several times a week. As you can see in the second screenshot there, they will pop this campaign 2018 hub on top of everything, and we often will anchor that. So these are just some of the things that when we're going into a partnership with a platform, we go to them and we say, what more can we do? We want to do more than just put a feed of stories on there. We want to take it to the next level. We want to be the sort of the star in your environment. And when you get buy-in from both sides, you can do great things and really sort of push the boundaries. So Snapchat Discovery. We have been on Snapchat now for almost 2 years, I want to say, or 2 years in early spring. A lot of people were asking when we were approaching Snapchat, like, why would you want to go on there? What, like, the Discover environment has a lot of trash content and a lot of clickbait, and you know, do you really want to get mixed up in that? It's really easy to go in there and want to sort of pander to the audience. And I think wrongfully so, sort of talk down to the audience or try to lower your standards to what basically old people trying to figure out what young people like by copying an emoji and doing like all weird stuff that really just sort of denigrates your brand. So we want to go in there because there's a unique audience, right? There's no other place that I know of where the Washington Post can reach 13 to 17-year-olds at a rate that we do on Snapchat. But when we go in there, we want to stay true to our brand. So we put what we believe, we tell real stories, we tell serious stories. We do have some fun, but these are all Washington Post stories, and they're all on brand, and we handle things in the way we would with any other platforms. We also went in there as the first publisher to break news, which was an interesting experiment, and one that has been met with mixed results. We've had, when we first went in, we were breaking news constantly, and we weren't seeing the return. So now we focus it on bigger events and really, things that are watermark events.
The personal as political, and recognizing that because I am Black and gay and a woman, those aspects of my identity are inherently politicized.
So what kind of stories do we tell? We tell stories that we know are important to the audience. We tell stories that we think that we believe they will want to know. We also tell them about things that we feel like they need to know. And then we also inject a little fun within that too. Again, as with our app, our flagship app, we sort of have this approach of like, we want a mix of what's important and interesting. If there's a big policy story, it doesn't mean that we're going to avoid it. We're going to figure out a way to put it in context for that audience. So I'm going to show you this next door. I'm going to let it run. It was sort of a special edition that we did. And the interesting thing about this was about the Vegas shooting, the concert shooting. We followed 6 girls in the aftermath of the shooting for 2 months. So the shooting happened on October 1st, and it follows them all the way to their homecoming. And it's about these 6 girls who've sort of had obviously lasting effects from this event. What was unique for us about this was the first time that we published in tandem with the website. So this went live at the same time. Usually everything publishes out to the web, then we sort of refocus it or readjust it to work on these platforms. This one was done in tandem. And one of the reasons why was, one, because of the audience that it affects. I think they're all high school seniors. And then a lot of the assets, which you'll see here, are native to mobile phones. There's a lot of video that these girls took while they were there. There's text messaging, there's Instagram posts. And so it felt like a natural place for this to live. This is about 2.5 minutes. I'll let it run. But and then we dedicated the whole edition to it. So usually we have a wide variety of content, but we thought this was worth turning over the whole edition to. And my apologies, it's recording off my phone, so it's a little challenging. So this is also broken into 4 chapters. So at logical points, we put swipe ups to where you could read the full story if you wanted to. So each segment leads into the next chapter. But the reporter, John Woodrow Cox, had like awesome access to so many things from these girls that made for a
Summer and I, we're talking about it. How, we walk around to school and, we just feel like we totally stand out from the crowd.
So this is the type of enterprise reporting that the Washington Post does really exceptionally. And it was part of a bigger series. And interesting thing about this, so the writer, John Woodrow Cox, did a whole series on guns and kids and the effects. That was a Pulitzer finalist, and this was part of that entry. That speaks a lot to like the position. It's like the Washington Post, where something like Snapchat now is seen as like a real avenue to reach readers and an important avenue to it's not in the background, it's in the forefront when we're conceiving how stories are going to be told. There's a stakeholder from Snapchat who's there, who's talking about what we can do on that platform. And then the other stuff that we've been doing there is we are creating original content now. So before we were repurposing, then what I just showed you, doing that thing. Now we're thinking, how can we do helpful things for the midterm elections? So we have two types of content here I'm going to show you. One is a video about a kid who's amazing. He's 14 years old. He was running for governor of Vermont, and he's so amazing. You just have to see it. And then one I'll talk about.
I think we all, even as adults, have a hard time understanding how to make a change in the world. You know, he brings a whole new perspective to politics. So I think go for it.
Snapchat team.
I do have reservations. I think 14 is very young, but he seems to be a very bright and intelligent and articulate young man, and I have great hopes for his future.
I think he's definitely sparked a lot of engagement that I think a lot of people didn't, like I didn't know that I had in me to speak my mind and to show, you know, what we think to the world.
Ethan Sonneborn.
I'm Ethan Sonneborn. I'm running for governor of Vermont. And I think that pushed me over the edge to leave as in Charlottesville. It was the first time I had this realization that a new generation of leaders can do better.
Okay, we need to start by introducing myself. My name is Sonneborn. Yeah, I try to steer away from my age in my statements. Well, I will figure it out over the course of the debate. And my age is not really for campaign.
I was a legislative age this late winter and early spring. My second day, the page was the Parkland school shooting. And I think we have to move to a system where we put safety first. And I think it means we tackle mental health issues. I think it means we tackle safety issues. And I think it means we tackle gun issues.
The school shootings around then, we organized a lot of demonstrations. He encouraged people to go to March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. and in Montpelier. He spoke at an event. I think it shows that we definitely hear what's going on and that we have a voice, and I'm glad that he's giving our age that voice.
To young voters, it's on us to build our own future. You know, each generation becomes progressively more concerned about the environment and the economy and the issues that face us. You know, the issues of racial, economic, and social justice. You've got to get involved. You've got to vote. You've got to knock on doors. It's how we're going to make the change we want to see this state, in this country, in this world. And I think that when we get involved, we make our democracy stronger.
It's amazing. And then the next series, I'll just show a little snippet of it. We created this thing called the midterms cheat sheet. So what are issues or things about the midterm elections that a younger audience should be paying attention to?
When it comes to the number of women in government, the United States lags behind a lot of the world. In a 2017 report by the United Nations, the United States ranked 104th in the world in terms of the percentage of female legislators in its government. Not top 10, not top 50, not even top 100. 104th. We're supposed to be number one, America. Nearly 100 years since women got the right to vote, less than 20% of the House and 22% of the Senate are women. And out of 50 states, there are only 6 female governors, despite the fact that women vote in larger numbers than men. Back in 1992, a surge in female candidates brought the number of women in the House.
So anyways, that's just, again, original video for the platform, taking it sort of to the next level, highly produced. The third thing I'm going to talk about is the Lily. Those of you who don't know what the Lily is, it's this women's vertical that we started about almost 2 years ago as well. And so the problem we were trying to solve for was, one, we weren't reaching a younger female audience. And then, so how do you introduce the post? How do you introduce a new audience to what the Post is doing? How do you move away maybe from the stigma that the Washington Post is sort of old and stuffy? So this came out of a bunch of ideas. One, how to reach a different audience, but then the whole idea of it was that majority of it will live on social. It's got a huge, I'll show you right here. The philosophy is to go where the audience lives. So it's got a big Twitter following. It has a big newsletter following. It's got Instagram and, of course, Facebook. A big part of the Lily was building a brand outside the Washington Post. It had to have a visual identity. Our editor and creative director are the same person. They're the design director for the team at large, but she had a vision for how she wanted to tell stories and how do you stand out in people's social feeds when everything's a blur, there's no consistency. This was an attempt, or is an attempt, and is successfully bringing you to a place where when you're in your feeds and you see imagery from our from the Lily, you'll know exactly what it is. So as you can see, our Instagram feed is on the left there versus our competitors, which all look the same, sort of are kind of a wash. The Lily has a strict color palette. Black and white, obviously, is the foundation with a few other accent colors. On Instagram, they always rotate from black background to white background. This attention to detail and to design is what really helps set it apart from what everyone else is doing. The team has done an amazing job with Instagram stories. They not only tell some of the stories that are on their sites, they do takeovers. So they'll reach out to influencers. One of their features is called I'll drink to that. Where the person basically has a drink and answers a series of questions. They've done several series like this that just live in the Instagram story environment. And then like the Anxiety Chronicles are another one where they've talked to people weigh in on their anxieties and how they handle them. But this great work that they've done on Instagram has led to kind of the next level. So Instagram took notice. They said, we love what you're doing. We want to feature it more. We want to give you guys more exposure. We're going to launch this thing called Instagram TV. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it or not, but they came to us and they said, do you have a series? Would you want to launch a series, be a premier partner for this? So we did, and I'm just going to run the trailer for it.
I am 30 years old and I've never opened and held a female condom before. Oh, this is the one that goes in your arm. Oh, right there, you can feel it. Oh, wow. How much do I think I know about birth control? I can't trust the internet. Women have been using contraception since biblical times. Ooh, girl, this is sticky.
taking the temperature, and I can't remember if I'm supposed to stay in bed or not.
I had a really cute adolescent couple who fundamentally believed that the condom is now in her stomach.
Oh my God. I'm Maya Sugarman, video editor for The Willy. Catch all of season 1 here now, and look out for season 2 and a bonus episode of When Used Correctly.
So this was this is an 8-part series. It's been hugely successful, where they sort of talked to a lot of professionals and medical professionals about and debunk myths about birth control and other issues. So then we had a follow-up with this next series, which I'll show the trailer for, which just launched, where it's about a lot of YouTube and a bunch of YouTube influencers. So it was made in conjunction with Instagram and YouTube, but some of these influencers sort of telling their stories.
I am about to tell a story I've never told before. Here it goes. And I was in way over my head and totally freaked out. It makes me very afraid to love or be loved. It took a really bad emotional toll on me. That's when everything blew up.
So this is another really cool series that they've launched, and you guys should check it out. But again, it's really pushing the boundaries. Once you get into a platform, how do you take steps to keep pushing on that? And how do you keep innovating? And we've been able to do that successfully by creating these things that are very stylized and smart and funny, and really resonate with the audience. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, one more thing. The next level newsletters. The Lily does an inbox experience where you don't have to click out. It's everything smart. It's everything from like strategies for life to interviews with celebrities that they think are on the up and coming and have a strong message. It's beautiful. It's more and more we're turning to newsletters as a way to drive audience. And to drive following. And their newsletter has been super successful. The Post has 60 newsletters. This one, I believe, has the 5th highest open rate out of all the newsletters at the Washington Post, which says a lot to the form. We don't have any other newsletter that takes a form like this. And then the interesting thing is when you start a project from scratch, which is loosely, not overtly attached to the Washington Post, it's been an interesting experiment on how can you build a brand with experimentation and expansion. So zines are huge. I don't know if they're huge with you guys, but millennials apparently love zines. So they've done zine workshops, which is the thing on the left there, where you can kind of make your own magazine, where they go out in the community and they get like 100 people come in and they build them together. They have swag. And then sort of expansion. They now have a book club called Lily Lit Club, which is all done on Instagram, which is an interesting format. So it's run, basically it's a conversation over Instagram. They ask for readers to send their favorite excerpts. They'll get featured. It's a totally different way of doing a traditional thing. And that's what I love about what this team does, because they're constantly pushing on what kind of is next and what's the next way to use these platforms. And lastly, they don't just do it online, they take it to the streets. So like they have commissioned murals around DC, and just to build brand they in popular places. And they're getting businesses that want them to put murals on the sides of their building. So it's been a really interesting experience to see sort of this groundswell of support around DC and sort of the East Coast right now around this brand, and hopefully spreading out this way. Definitely big and also big on the West Coast as well. So with that said, that's it. That's what I got.
Anyone have questions, if you would come down to the mic. Any questions for Chris about any of their products, what they're doing, what they're thinking? Hey, Chris.
Hi.
I'm watching Post Center.
Cool.
2017, right? I'm actor.
Oh, yeah.
So my question is about Snapchat. I saw this morning that
Condé Nast was like shutting down GQs and I think Teen Vogue Snapchat channels. And I was wondering, have you seen any reason for the Washington Post to scale back their Snapchat strategy, considering that a lot of posts are doing the same, or is it a solid investment that's going to continue?
For us, it's worth the time and the investment. Like I said, we're not reaching an audience like that anywhere else. And as I told some people last night, and I've said this a lot, I view what we do sort of as we're like a gateway drug to the Washington Post. I like to think of us that way. So like we want to build habit somewhere, and then hopefully over time they'll either stay with that or they'll come to the Post and migrate over. So, I mean, for right now, a platform where you're reaching, millions of people a day, like it's of value to us. It's highly publicized that Snapchat is not making money for these platforms. Their advertising business hasn't been great, but we're in a fortunate position where we can let it ride, like go far out on it because the audience justifies being there for us. Yeah.
On platforms like Snapchat and in general, I guess, how do you balance the desire for traffic with the editorial standards of the Post? And I guess sort of adjacent to that, how do you maintain editorial independence with a high-profile billionaire owner like Bezos?
The second question is easy. He's not really involved at all. Not from an editorial standpoint. If he does, he trusts the people. I mean, our editor is Marty Barron, who's like one of the best editors in the country. And our publisher is fantastic too. So he's pretty hands-off that way. If there's any, or he is hands-off when it comes to editorial control. But if anything, he weighs in more on like tech and product side stuff. I think if he ever did sort of try to impose a viewpoint or a will, I think like Marty Barron wouldn't put up for it. He'd walk like he would. That's the kind of guy he is. So, and then you were saying, how do you measure editorial direction versus audience on Snapchat?
Basically the balance, how do you avoid being clickbait? How do you balance?
I think you stay true to your brand. I mean, we set a standard and we're confident that the stories we're telling are important. And yeah, if we were putting our Kardashian story on the cover, we could probably triple our audience, but it wouldn't be our brand. It wouldn't be on brand. So, we still have the same fundamental mission. We're not trying to be something we're not, I guess. And we also don't, that's just, fundamentally, it's not like the place where we'd come from on there. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Lily, you showed it off in IGTV.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who uses IGTV. Yeah. Does anyone in this room use IGTV? Not a single person.
Yeah.
Are you being paid by Instagram to be there? And what do you think the future is of IGTV?
I think you have to experiment on every aspect. I agree. It's got a low audience at this point. Now, I mean, to be fair, those videos are also being distributed everywhere else, YouTube, on site, on every other platform that we have. But, I think that you have to experiment on those things. Now, we've done 2 series that have gone on there, but it's not... we're not spending all day working on IGTV. It's kind of a side thing. So we'll do it and we'll see how it grows. If it does grow, if it doesn't grow, we'll dial back, which is kind of our approach to everything. But we'll give it a run. But yeah, I agree. It's got viewership problems at this point in terms of how do you get people to click on that little button, right? So yeah.
Like kind of following up on that, everything you showed was so like tailored for the platform.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide if you need to put more effort into a platform to make it really shine or just pull out?
Yeah. If you're not getting a return, I guess that's the biggest measurement. If we set internal goals and we're not hitting those internal goals, or we don't see a trajectory that's heading towards those internal goals, we'll dial it back. I didn't really focus on the failures. I guess I could have, because there's plenty of them where we minimize what we're doing in those spaces. But the approach up front is to go all in to the extent we can. We don't have unlimited resources, and these, as you can see, those are all very design intensive experiences and edited experiences. So we go and we experiment, and then, we take a measurement over time. And if in 6 months it's not working, or 4 months, we'll start to taper off and dial back what we do there. Thank you. Yeah. But I do think it's kind of been our philosophy that we have to put like the best foot forward, at least in the beginning. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, just go at it pretty hard in the beginning and then dial back if we've not seen the return we're looking for. Yeah.
Hi. So I work for a radio station, and we pull a lot from like Learview and AP. And you were talking about being like to native readers. We reach out to bigger places like you guys for big country, national, global news.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever tried anything to kind of localize your things, especially with the app, like a location touch where you put some local information so it feeds that way?
It's not a bad idea. It has been talked about in the past. It's just not a strategy point, I guess, at this moment. It could be down the road, but it's right now we are expanding nationally, but it's more at a higher level than a local level. I mean, you're saying basically take content or get an agreement with local news to localize a section of your app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just keeping with the Washington Post app, so you can have like a location button.
Yeah.
Things where it pulls from local stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we talk a lot about personalization at the Post, and that's kind of the opposite of what this app, like our particular app, is. So we kind of have a constant struggle because part of the room feels like the idea of giving someone a curated package. Of course, it doesn't have your local news, but the idea of having a curated package where editors are picking the best content is in many ways better than just giving you news that's either something you like or localized, right? So there's a little bit of a risk there, but I mean, talking about importing sort of a local section from a different part of the country is definitely interesting. It's just not something that we haven't really gone down that road yet. Yeah.
And this will be our last question, unless anyone else has a real burning one.
You talked about limiting the amount of breaking news you put on these interactive apps.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that skews the exposure to news to maybe younger generations who don't interact with the website as much as they do with these new apps?
So what, can you say it again, the first part?
You talked about limiting the amount of breaking news that you put into these things.
Yeah.
How do you think that?
Okay, so the first, our main app, the mobile version updates in real time. So that one's constantly updating. The tablet app is a little bit more of a lean back experience just because tablet users are morning and night usually. You see a spike in the morning, you see a spike at night. So we don't do as much maintenance throughout the day. Something big happens, we do break it in and put it in there. So it will be up to date. Snapchat was an experiment because we were breaking a lot of news in there and people weren't coming back. Like we weren't seeing the audience returning. So instead we made a more concerted effort to break it in a more organized fashion. So like morning or afternoon, unless it's something like Parkland. And then we're like on it, updating constantly. Like it depends. It depends what bar the breaking news rises to. But if it's something on the level of like a shooting versus an appointment of to Trump's cabinet that most people wouldn't know anything about, we're probably not going to blow up an edition to put that in right at the moment versus something that's active and happening. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Well, we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back with Mark Halsey from the Big Ten Network talking about how they use mobile media. There's coffee in the Centennial Room. You go out to the stairways and make a left.